This is the fifth estate winning headlines, your media police post, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya, from the Fortal School of Government. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you may have missed this morning. But we also take a look at some of the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 31st of March 2022, and I am 2M.
I am CS.
And I am 2J, and in case you missed today's headlines, here they are. In the Daily Nation, the uppercut. The Standard, how BBI verdict will shape August 9 polls. The Star, MPs reject IEBC bid to stop results streaming. And in the People Daily, BBI litmus test for Supreme judges. So I think we're going to skip the headlines today because the events of the day have, of course, been taken over by the Supreme Court ruling. And so I think that we'll just start very quickly by dissecting what we witnessed today.
Yeah.
So before the Supreme Court made their decision, there were only two possible outcomes.
Right.
One, the courts could declare BBI constitutional. Legally, this would leave a small window of time to execute a referendum, either during or after the election.
Yes.
This option would be a win for the Reggae squad.
Yeah.
Two, the Supreme Court could rule BBI unconstitutional. In this case, it would be a win for William Ruto. But here he would really gain nothing. However, our binary approach was wrong. And we are prepared to change our mind because today's decision has provided country with an alternative path to constitutional change.
Yes.
The summary version of events confirm that reggae is not dead. In declaring the BBI bill unconstitutional, the Supreme Court also illuminated the path to achieve the goal of the handshake through a new and different bill.
Correct.
In short, BBI is a dream deferred that will come to pass in whatever form, name, or process.
Yes.
Let me explain. According to the Supreme Court, BBI collapsed first and foremost because the president was involved. This was the original sin. In quoting Justice Orko, the president cannot run with the hare and hunt with the hounds. But a rejection purely because the president was involved begs an important question. Who misadvised Uhuru Kenyatta to be the face of BBI?
Whoa.
And the answer is the deep state, especially if the Raila Odinga statement and the points in the Supreme Court ruling are anything to go by. But if the only mistake the president made was getting too close to the process of constitutional change, did that alone corrupt the entire BBI process? The Supreme Court said no.
Yes.
In fact, of the 7 issues brought by the BBI team before the court, the judges agreed with 5. They only rejected 2.
Yes.
They confirmed adequate public participation, established quorum within the IEBC,
So important.
solidified the immunity of a sitting president, and most critically, issued a complete and total rejection of the basic structure doctrine.
Yeah.
Dear Kenyans, reggae is back.
Yes.
And it is this rejection of the basic structure doctrine that has revived BBI.
Yes.
This imported idea was the main obstacle because it recklessly argued that it was unconstitutional to amend the constitution.
Yes.
The Supreme Court has verified that this is nonsense. Now, with this ruling, the constitution can be amended, whether through parliament or again through popular initiative. It can happen before the election, but the timelines are very tight.
Yeah.
And if done before the election, it will benefit everyone. In fact, William Ruto, after losing the election, has a chance to become the PM. This is how we embrace the handshake doctrine.
Yes.
On the flip, if done after the election, the inclusion of the leader of opposition is also on the cards.
Yes.
And so we ask, on the surface, the Githeri media has told us that BBI is unconstitutional and that Raila and Uhuru have lost.
Yeah.
But have they? Or were they playing the long game? Do remember that constitution making is a process and not an event.
Yes.
The journey has just begun. Happy Reggae Day.
Nobody can stop reggae. You start playing that song. Bashir, you here?
So the writer, Robert Penn Warren, in the book All the King's Men wrote that reality is not a function of the event as event, but of the relationship of that event to past and future events. We would like to consider what the judgment of the Supreme Court means in relation to past and future events. But first, allow us to say that we are happy that we did not hear any of the esteemed judges quoting Wikipedia.
Oh, yes.
Already that is a good sign.
Yes.
We're also happy that the justices of the Supreme Court determined that the basic structure doctrine is a foreign concept, and almost unanimously they decided to deport it by putting it on the next available flight back to India.
Yes.
They scrutinized the basic structure doctrine in the context of our jurisdiction, our history, and the intentions of the drafters of our constitution.
Yeah.
And they also looked at the context from which this doctrine emerged.
Correct.
Its origin is a famous case known to most constitutional law students, the case of Kesavananda Bharati.
Yes.
At that time in India, just like in our pre-2010 constitution, it was Parliament that had the power to amend the constitution.
Yeah.
The courts in India had frustrated Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in a number of decisions, and so she used Parliament to change many key elements of the constitution to expand executive power and to also cut down the courts to size.
Yes.
By reversing some of the decisions of the court, completely undermining the doctrine of separation of powers.
Right.
The basic structure doctrine was therefore meant to ensure Parliament could not remodel the Indian state however they wanted without at least involving the people, because it is they who are sovereign. Those safeguards already exist in our constitution, especially in Article 255 (1). And in fact, it was the High Court and the Court of Appeal that tried to amend the constitution by introducing elements that drafters didn't intend and which the Kenyan people did not agree to.
Yes.
Essentially, what the Supreme Court has therefore done is that it has safeguarded the sovereignty of the people of Kenya.
Amen.
Yes.
They also asserted that we should be careful not to incorporate foreign concepts wholesale into our jurisdiction before we have exhausted our own internal mechanisms, which are better suited to our needs and peculiarities as Kenyans. In fact, we also made this mistake when we borrowed the American presidential style model, which has resulted in a lack of inclusiveness and an unsustainable winner-take-all model.
Yep.
We turned to an American presidential model, and yet we already had a homegrown solution for an inclusive executive that has worked before. This solution was in Section 3 of the National Accord and Reconciliation Act of 2008.
Yes.
It introduced a prime minister appointed from the party that has the largest number of MPs in the National Assembly, as well as 2 deputy prime ministers. If it sounds familiar, it is because it was one of the many proposals in BBI, an inclusive national executive designed to cure the tensions that arise every election cycle by building a bigger table with more seats to improve the quality of representation at the national level. It was in fact what primarily helped cease hostilities in 2008, inclusiveness. And returning to that model is still a viable option, because what the Supreme Court also determined is that the key issue that stands in the way of BBI proceeding along its current path is how the process was initiated. What was litigated and adjudicated was process, not substance. So the Junet Mohammed and Dennis Waweru version of the BBI may be dead, but all the core issues of the First Amendment are still very much alive.
Oh,
Woo.
yes.
Succinct.
Viva reggae.
Viva reggae. The Supreme Court ruling today fell short of an advisory on how to do BBI. In fact, the Supreme Court judges acted like the lead consultants of BBI. And it's on this basis that we want to tell country that the BBI verdict is still not yet out. In fact, when Baba becomes boss, Uhuru Kenyatta himself can still sponsor BBI because he'll not be president. He will be on the same side as Wanjiku.
I like that.
But I have another thought. And this thought is to Kikuyus. To all card-carrying Gema members from the mountain that supported the shooting down of BBI, you are stupid. And that's because BBI was the inheritance Uhuru Kenyatta was leaving you.
Oh, yes.
When Uhuru Kenyatta was giving you BBI, he was dog whistling to you. BBI was his political will that you Mount Kenya people would have bequeathed. He was giving you an insurance policy that would have firewalled you against attacks from future regimes. And the policy was simple. If we don't have control of the presidency, we must have control of parliament. And that's because the numerical strength of Gema had to be institutionalized.
Fact.
It had to be organized in an organ like parliament in order to protect the interests of the mountain. If Gema had 70 extra seats in parliament, you Kikuyu MPs would control more than a third of parliament. There wouldn't be a single parliamentary motion that would pass without your say. But it wouldn't just be control of parliament. Kema would have had 70 extra constituencies, also meant Mount Kenya would have received an extra 7 billion shillings in CDF money alone.
Yeah.
Now that's all lost. And that's not all. You Mount Kenya people have lost an extra 53 billion shillings every year to counties. In short, you just haven't lost your leverage in parliament. You have lost more than $500 billion shillings in the 10 years Raila or Ruto may be in power. And it's not just about the money. It's also about the loss of influence in government. Influence in the civil service is determinant on the ethnic composition of the civil service. And that's a fact. By virtue of being in power for over 35 years, Kikuyus have dominated the civil service since independence. In fact, for every 3 civil servants there is, 1 is a Kikuyu. When Moi was in power, Kalenjins dominated the civil service. Be sure that when your Mother Maki retires, you Kikuyus will have your power diluted. You will cease being relevant in the civil service, period. Eden Duale will be giving scholarships using your taxes to his people to go to Finland, yet you Kikuyus will be taking your children to Muranga Teachers College. When police recruitment is happening in Kiambu, only 2 out of 10 Kikuyus will be shortlisted. And to top off the stupidity you have, you Kikuyus, you have exchanged your inheritance for a wheelbarrow. I will leave you with words from scripture.
Wow, okay, cue the organs.
Hosea chapter 4, verse 6 and 7. My people perish for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I will also reject you as my priests. Since you have forgotten the law of your God, I will also forget your children. The more they multiplied, the more they sinned against me. They exchanged their glory for a thing of disgrace.
Preach.
Wow. All right, so on that note, I hope you will stay with us as we continue to dissect what the Supreme Court ruling means. And I agree with you, 2M. I think that the verdict is not yet out. I think only time will tell what this really means.
Absolutely.
So please continue to watch us on your TV screens. We're on Pan Free to Air, GoTV, and Star Times. Tune in on Sunday for Damaging Ignorance, where Mutahi Nguni and the boys will give you a dose of truth. I will leave you with a quote from former President JFK during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He said, "Our goal is not victory of might, but the vindication of right. Not peace at the expense of freedom, but both peace and freedom. We hope, God willing, that this goal will be achieved." Have a lovely evening, and we will see you on Sunday.